We are live now.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Yes, we're live. Welcome to this Substack Live about unlearning some of the beliefs that are holding you back from gardening. My name is Kendall Marie Platt. I'm a horticultural therapist, and it's basically my life's mission to get the world gardening so we can release a bit of the pressure that we're all under. And I have got the lovely Lee with me here today, who is an expert in unlearning. So we're going to be talking about some of the beliefs that I hear from my community. Lee's going to be bringing some of her own beliefs into this. And then Lee's going to be talking to us about how we can start trying to unlearn some of these beliefs.
Yeah.
So Lee, do you want to give a little bit of an intro to you?
Yes. So I pulled a face when you said I'm an expert in unlearning because I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm an unlearner with my L plates on, well and truly, because I think it's a lifelong thing that we do. But basically, I am a coach that help people to unlearn the invisible rules that are showing up in their life and their work, so that people can reclaim their agency and start to have and build a life that fits them where they are now. So I'm sure as we get into the conversation, there'll be all sorts of stuff that comes out in terms of what we might have been conditioned to believe that is perhaps influencing how we choose to or not choose to show up in our garden.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So should we crack on then?
Go on then.
I just want to say hi to a couple of people. So Karen, hi to you, and Deborah. I think I've got this set so people can ask questions.
Fab.
I'll be completely honest, the tech is a little bit of a... But hopefully if people have questions or beliefs that they want to put into the chat and we can chat about them live, that'd be really good. But I'm gonna start us off with a classic, okay, that I literally hear from every person I ever meet is, oh, I'd love to garden, or I'd love to have a nice garden, but I just don't have the time. Or, people feel like they need to have hours and hours of time to garden. Like they need to block out the entire weekend and spend all weekend out there. And obviously for many of us, that's just not realistic. Many of us are working now. We're not most of us are not just at home with no other responsibilities. So we're working. We've either got, pets that need walking. We've got elderly parents maybe that we need to look after. We've got children perhaps that we're doing school runs, etc. And so finding that time, hours and hours on a weekend is just not realistic. So I wonder, Lee, if you could talk to maybe a little bit about if you feel that this shows up for you in your life, because I know you've got a lovely garden which we have worked on together. And I wonder if time is a factor for you, and if it is, what might be kind of going on here for people.
Yeah. So time has definitely been an excuse. There are other excuses that are a lot stronger. I'm sure will come out when we talk. But yes, definitely it's felt like something that I haven't prioritized. And I think the whole thing around the beliefs that we have about how or why we don't garden, we think it's about the gardening, but actually it's always going to be about something else. It's going to be around the type of person that we think we are. And it will be about, I don't think I'm the type of person who can slow down. I don't think I'm the type of person who can have the time to be in my garden. So I think that's the first thing to say is actually we might have a belief, but underneath there'll be rules that are at play that are the real reason why we're not showing up and doing what we're doing. So you could say when you're saying you don't have enough time to garden or it's going to take too many hours to garden, actually you're probably saying, I don't think this is important enough to prioritise. I don't value my time enough to make this a priority. I can't justify spending time in the garden until I've done X, Y, and Z.
That's a big one.
If I can't do it properly, I'm not going to do it at all. So there's this stuff around perfectionism and all of that will be coming into play around it. And there's probably a bit of a rule around, rest and doing something for pleasure is indulgent. And I just don't have the time for that. So the time is the excuse that's perhaps being used, but if we dig deeper, excuse the pun, there'll be there will be other things that are actually at play, and you'll probably find it's at play for other things that you're not doing for yourself.
Yeah, I think what I, largely I work with, busy women, mothers. A lot of it is it's not, it's not a productive thing, so I can't be doing
Mm,
it. So it's like, oh, and people say to me a lot, oh, well, I'll get in the garden when I've done X, Y, and Z, and it's like, well, if your to-do list is anything like mine, it's never ending.
it's never,
There's
no.
literally always something else on there. So a few years ago, when I burnt out, um, because I was always kind of putting other things above my health and
Mm,
well-being in the priority list. That, it got to the point where I was like, I can't ignore this anymore. Like, I was burnt out, and I was like, I need to actually prioritize me for a bit. And now I kind of am in this happy medium. And yes, of course, I go through waves, but like, you know, I'm in this happy medium where yes, I manage to do all the household stuff that needs to get
yeah,
done, and the kid care, and the all of the other stuff, the work, but I also make sure that I get in my garden every day, because even if it's just for 5 minutes, and sometimes it is just 5 minutes, because I recognize that actually if I don't do that, I'm just going to end up in burnout again. And
yeah,
I think yeah, it's such a common one, that kind of, that on the face of it, oh, I don't have time. But I say to my clients a lot, it's not that you don't have time, it's that you said it's not a priority for me right now.
yeah, yeah,
And I get that. But at the same time, if you're using your garden to support your well-being, then you're effectively saying that your well-being isn't a priority for you right now.
yeah,
So, I think it's really important, like you say, to dig down into those kind of throwaway phrases that we chuck out there, um, and find out what is really going on. Because you can bet your bottom dollar, I'm 100% probably scrolling on my phone at various points throughout the day. And if I added that up, I could easily
yeah,
find 20 minutes to half an hour to go in my garden. And I
yeah,
know for a fact that that is going to be better for me mentally than doom scrolling.
yeah,
There's so much research out there about how bad, like, staring at a phone screen and filling your head with shite is, when actually, a big part of getting in the garden is unloading all of the shite out of your head
yeah,
into the garden, and kind of setting yourself a little bit free. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting one. So you would say then, for that particular belief, it's kind of about actually maybe going to chat to a friend, or sitting with a journal, and sort of really digging into, okay, but I'm saying it's because I don't have time, but realistically, actually, what is it? and
yeah,
and I think largely for a lot of women, it will be around it not being productive, not feeling worthy of doing something for themselves.
yeah,
Because I think, that's a big one for us, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
feeling that it's okay to say, I deserve 20 minutes for myself. I mean, when you say that,
yeah,
it
yeah,
kind of breaks my heart that people don't believe that they are allowed to have 20 minutes, like, we
yeah.
give so much of our time to other people. It's okay for you to have 20 minutes for you,
But it runs deep, and this is a conditioned behaviour. It's not
Yeah.
something that's happened overnight. It's something that we've been programmed because maybe our parents didn't prioritise gardening, so we didn't grow up
Yeah.
in an environment where we saw that. It might be that you've a bit like my situation. I lived in flats for a number of years. When I came to the house, buying the house that we've got and having a garden, it was already established. So I didn't have to do like lots of the grunt work,
Mm.
but it was never part of my routine. So I never
No.
figured out how to make it part of my routine. And so
Yeah.
it just never has done. So
Yeah.
there'll be a whole load of stuff that you can go back to go, well, why haven't I done this?
Yeah.
And I suppose the question to ask is, like, if we're using, say, time, I don't have time, or I think it's going to take too long, like, ask ourselves instead, what is what's the story that I'm telling to myself about what it means about me that I don't have time?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
then see what that unpacks, because
Yeah.
we've just given some examples of the real reasons why, but that might not be relevant for everyone. People might have
yeah,
different,
of course. Yeah. And,
things.
I'm only speaking really from my own experience and also experience with clients, on the face of it, it's like, oh, I don't have time. But then when we dig down into it, it's actually all of these stories around worth and giving them, allowing themselves that time for them. Another one I'd love to move on to, and I think you will maybe identify with this, is that story of like, I don't know enough, so like I need to learn more in order to be able to get in the garden. And I see this with people, when they come to me, they're like, I've spent hours on YouTube looking up at how to do it. And it's almost like this thing, and I've experienced this in starting my own business, right? In that it's like, oh, I just need to learn a few more things and then I'll feel ready. So I wonder, like, what's at play there, or what sort of things can we do to, like, maybe my attitude eventually was like, and sometimes is with my clients, you just need to give it a go.
So there's, with that one, and it's definitely true for me, is I've been conditioned in a way that I think I need expertise before I can show I've got experience in something. So that was definitely, I remember when we got this garden, I went to the charity shops and I bought every like Alan Titchmarsh book, and like, because I had to learn how to figure out, and they just bamboozled me. So I always said, until I've read these books, I'm not going to realise. Until I've watched every episode of Gardener's World, I'm not going to know what to do. 12 years later, I still don't know what I'm going to do, because I still don't think I've learned enough. So it's a conditioning. It's some of the rules that could be at play is the sense of I shouldn't start unless I know I'm competent at something. So there's that thing around, I need it to be perfect. So unless I really know what I'm going to do, I'm not going to start. There's something around perhaps needing permission from someone that's an expert, so they give in their advice to you so that you feel like you've got some parameters to work within, because you don't trust your own judgment, or that fear of failure. And then there's probably could be something around I'm embarrassed to be a beginner and to say I'm a beginner, because it feels really overwhelming to be in spaces with people who know all these posh words that are really long, and like I've said to you in the past, like, it's a yellow flower, it smells nice, it's pink, like that's the basic of my knowledge. And I feel super intimidated when I go to places and they've got all the Latin words, and someone can just see a plant and they quote that to you and you think, oh, I don't know. Okay, I'm not going to engage in this conversation anymore.
Yeah. And I think that happens a lot, doesn't it, on the internet? Like, people are desperate to show their knowledge, so they like spout off all these Latin plant names, and then people are like, whoa, this is not for me. This is not for me. I can't garden because I don't know all the different names. Now, many of us did not study Latin at school. I did. I feck knows why, I'll be completely honest, but I did. But interestingly, not botanical names. It was about this boy called Quintus. Very strange. But anyway, that's by the by. But I make a big point in all of my content is to, yes, give the Latin plant names, because some people are real sticklers and they like that. But actually, they're not really the people I want to work with. I want to work with the people that are like, it's yellow, it smells nice. And because I actually don't believe that in order to be a gardener or to garden, you have to know like the names of everything. It's enough to be able to go out into your garden and get joy from it just by looking at the yellow plant or smelling its lovely scent. I really don't believe that that we kind of have to like get a frigging tick in the box to say that we know enough to do it, which is why I wanted to pick up on something you said. Actually, you said about sometimes people feel they need an expert to lean on. Now, I would say both of us probably are that expert for people, and I find often when people initially come to work with me, they're like, I kind of need you there as my like support, but then my whole like thing is like, right, let's work together for a year and create this beautiful garden. But after that year, yes, of course you can stay in my world, but I want you to be doing it on your own. I'm not here to kind of like mollycoddle you forever, because my whole thing is to help that person grow and not know all the plant names, none of that crap, like that doesn't come into it, but at least have the confidence to go out and prune something and not panic that it's going to die. Or, you know, if they want to like redesign a new border for their garden, for example, will have done that in another area of their garden, so they can then just use those steps that I've taught them to do that again. So, and I would say, like, in your work, I imagine, you know, you're almost like the space holder, aren't you, really? For that that work of like that almost that, and I don't want to say permission giver, because I kind of don't really like that. I don't feel that women need permission.
No.
But I do think it can be scary, can't it, to say, I'm new at this, I don't know what I'm doing, because you know, I kind of just think that it's almost not safe, is it, for women to kind of admit that perhaps they don't know it all. You know, I think generally people, you know, it's really vulnerable, and people don't want to be vulnerable. I'm just going to, and there's a couple of comments in the chat, so I just want to say here. So Carrie Ann Wade, she says, I do this with numbers and finance, tell myself I've never been a numbers person, but actually I have found ways to teach myself. Yeah, I think there's so many stories that we tell ourselves, and actually a lot of them are kind of bollocks. And a lot of them, I've noticed of mine, I've inherited from like teachers at school. So like, I literally was chatting to a journalist yesterday, and she said something about, oh, you're a writer. And I was like, oh, I'm not a writer. And then I was like, well, but I do write, so maybe I am a writer. And that harks back to like being told I wasn't a good writer at school by my English teacher. So, you know, it's really interesting once you start to kind of zoom out a bit and be like, oh, is that my voice actually, or is that someone else's voice?
And it all comes back to identity. Like all these things, the stories we tell is what shapes our identity. And then we've got the identities that other people see of us and that we are carrying. And so a lot of the work I do is identity unraveling and realigning identity with where people are now.
Yeah. And then she also says, same thing with wines. Oh, nice. My ex used to work in the wine industry and had all the lingo. I do tasting and say, I like this one because it reminds me of warm jam sandwiches on a picnic. That's so much more beautiful than like whatever bollocks they give them in the wine Noah's guide or whatever. I used to go to wine tastings at like, there's a wine shop over there, like on the other side of the village, and I used to go to these wine tastings, and there'd be people there really in the know, and they'd like be saying all these phrases, and I just feel like, yeah, I don't really like that one, or yeah, this one's nice, you know, because I was like,
this is going to give me heartburn tonight.
Oh my God, definitely. And you know, I think sometimes it's because we want to feel like we belong. And it can feel confronting, can't it, to be like, to stand aside and go, actually, I'm not that bothered about belonging, but I do want to enjoy this activity. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I wonder if you have a couple that I think you mentioned a couple to me, if you wanted to bring one of your ones up can you remember what they are?
I definitely think that I think that I kill everything. I'm also told that I kill everything. So again, it goes back to the stories that we tell and the stories that other people tell of us. So I am sat looking at a bunch of fresh cut flowers that are very much dead in front of me. I have various plants around the house that are like the most low effort ever, that are probably about 2 months overdue watering, and I can see they're all just like going. And that's been my story. And so when it comes to outside in the garden, when we first moved to our house, the lady who lived here before was a super keen gardener, and it's very established, and she had all these pots and this, that and the other. So I bought all the pots, I bought all these plants, and they didn't even last 6 months. And I've gone through this pattern of just buying things that look nice with no understanding of whether it works in my soil or whether it's like
no strategy,
how to look after it, no strategy. And every single one has died. And so my story to myself is, I'm not a gardener because I can't keep anything alive.
And obviously, you know, having worked together, is that, you know, I said to you, get rid of the bloody pots. Like, pots are effort, you know, you have to water them. And also we spoke about, you know, having choosing plants for your garden that are designed to last for more than a year. You know, often the kind of pretty ones that they have in the garden centre, they're going to die after a year, no matter what you do to them. Like, they are only designed to last for that like short window of time. So I think actually sometimes we take, we hear these stories and we kind of just take them on as an identity. And there's that it's a psychological thing, isn't there? And it's like a negative, there's always a negative bias. Like we always have a negative bias as people. And then obviously every time we go around through our lives, we're effectively collecting evidence about our personality. And it's because of the negative bias, we're far more likely to collect the negative evidence to then reinforce that belief. So, I mean, interestingly for me, I don't even bother with house plants because my house is really dark and old and cold. So they're just not designed for that. They're designed for like light, bright houses,
But and I get that, but then you think, well, you're conditioned by these Insta-worthy room layouts and interior designers, and you can't have a kitchen unless you've got an open shelf with all your plants on display, and so there is this societal pressure that people can feel that actually a house isn't a home unless you've got lots of plants, and you've got your big whatever those things with the big arms are that I can't think I don't know what they're called.
What plants? The monster, the cheese plants.
The monster ones. Like that's the one that I'm always seeing people talking about on Instagram for some reason. How big it's growing and like whatever.
Yeah, because I think the thing is, it's like anything. Once they're happy, they'll grow like mad.
Yeah,
and I think the same to be true for like Instagram gardening content. No one's showing other than me, because me, I show the reality. But no one's showing their garden right now because it looks like shit. Like nobody's garden looks gorgeous right now. It's wet, it's miserable, like everything's brown. Yes, there might be a few little leaves poking up. There's one nice part of my garden right now, which is where all my hellebores are. Everything else looks like death. And that then I think is difficult because people are always like, oh, well, that's what I'm always aspiring to. And I get that. And we are aspiring to that. But we also have to accept that it's not going to look like that immediately for a start.
Yeah.
And also it really is a process, gardening. It is, you can't, unless you get someone in and you pay an absolute shit ton of money. Yes, they'll come in and they'll transform your garden overnight, and those plants will still need to grow in to fill the space though. But for me, I'm like, they're not my people. The ones that want to pay like and have someone else come and completely create their garden, they're not really the people that I'd work with, because I'm the sort of I want people to create their own space, because I feel like unless you've put your kind of time and love and effort into it, then your essence isn't in the garden, and it's not going to be as healing and as therapeutic for you.
What I was going to say was like that story I tell myself around I kill everything. Actually, it goes back to a rule around like the outcome is my identity. Failure means I'm not very good. And so all of that gets wrapped up. So there's a lot of that failure narrative that can be at play for people around why they worry of not trying. But yet we know, even the best gardeners in the world will have plants die on them. But we don't take that in. We just think that our first time of killing something is the story. It's failure. I don't want failure. Therefore, I can't garden.
Yeah, it's like seed sowing. People say to me all the time, oh, I sowed some seeds, but they didn't all like grow. And I was like, well, most germination rates on seeds are like 50%. So did at least half of them grow? And then they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, then you could never have achieved any more than that, But people think, oh, I put a seed in the ground and it just grows. It's like, but it doesn't work like that. So I think sometimes it's really good to have like these community spaces where you can go and like sanity check this stuff and be like, guys, I've sowed my seeds and like I've only got like 3 germinated, and then someone else will be like, okay, well, how many did you sow and how many did you want to grow for your garden? So like for me, I always sow way too many tomato seeds. I don't know why I do it every year. And I can only probably fit about eight plants in my greenhouse. So and they always all bloody germinate. So I probably sowed about 20 again this year. And I never learn, like I don't need that many plants. So sometimes it's like, okay, well, only 3 germinated. Well, how many did you want to grow in your garden? And people are, and people are like, oh, well, I hadn't really thought about that. So like, I'm all about kind of getting people to go back and be like, right, how many do I want to grow? If I want to grow, the scientist in me can't help it. If I want to grow 3 plants for this one border, and the germination rate is 50%, I'm only going to sow 6 seeds, maybe a couple of extras just in case, and then you can give one to your pal down the road or whatever if you get an extra germination. But sometimes it is, rather than just about like sprinkling a packet of seeds on the soil and seeing what happens, although I like a bit of that too. I do think sometimes we kind of need to have our own backs, and like bet on ourselves.
But what you also said around like being able to sense check that type of information isn't something that people widely talk about.
No.
And so like I didn't know, that's brand new information to me on this call. That there is, and now it makes sense, because I'm like, of course that is the case. It's the case if you run a business and you're going to have so many calls with people before you convert one to a sale, or you send an email out in Substack and you're only going to get a certain percentage open rate, and yet we fixate on the 100%, the perfect, and instead of what's the reality and what is the standard, what's the norm.
When we all know that perfection is like 100% is just bullshit. Like nothing ever is 100%. Like even in like exams at school, you didn't manage to get 100%. So it's like, I just think like that. And that comes from childhood, right? Like I look at my daughter trying to do her spelling tests or her time, so she's like, oh, I didn't get them all right. And I'm like, well, don't worry about it. Like, you can try again next time. Like, and I think that's kind of ingrained in us from that young, isn't it? So it's, for some of us, like 40 years of unlearning to stuff, belief to pick apart. Are there any others that you wanted to bring up? I've got a couple more here. I don't know if you remember what they are.
No, go on. You go with what.
So one of them, you said to me, but one of your beliefs is kind of that your like space isn't good enough. And I do hear this a lot from people, like, oh, my garden's really small, or I've only got a balcony, and it's like, so then they almost like take them out of the equation of even growing some plants before they've even begun.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that hasn't necessarily been an issue for me where I live, but there is a sense of, again, it goes back to this perfectionism and this need we're comparing with what other people have got, and that we're performing our garden in a sense. And so we think a garden, and when we think about even the phrase, I can't remember the phrase you used about this live, and we were going to cultivate our, what was the word you used?
Oh, I don't know. What did I say?
Something like your beautiful garden or something like that.
Oh, okay,
now,
your
beautiful
garden sanctuary,
garden sanctuary, that's going to mean something very different to every single person. But the likelihood is that our mind's gone to something that is like stately home garden or something like that.
Or what we see on the TV, like Monty Don's Beautiful Place, or, most of us watch Chelsea Flower Show. Those gardens cost an utter fortune. They bring in like fully grown plants that have been grown for years in some cases that will cost like crazy amounts of money. And people look at that and they think, well, mine doesn't look like that, so therefore I'm shit. And it's like, that is, they've got decades of experience behind them, the people building those gardens. And loads of help from other people, like the growers have specifically grown those plants. They bring in landscapers who help. So, they're really tapping into that like network. It's not all on that one designer. And so I think, when you are just one person wanting to create that garden, cut yourself a little bit of slack and let yourself, oh, sorry, I just kicked a watering can there.
I was going to say bucket.
And and just realize that there's only so much information you can possibly hold in your brain, and that it's okay to rely on other people to get that information. Work with somebody in your unlearning, work with somebody to support you in your garden. It's okay to ask for help, and I think for me that's been a big one, because I am hyper independent, and I really struggled to ask for help. And even this morning, actually, like I got up and then my husband was like, "Oh, can you take our daughter to the childminder?" And I was like, "Oh, but I've got to do all these things first." I was like, "I wish you'd said to me last night that I was going to take her, because I just really didn't, it just really threw me." And in
Yeah.
the end, like past me would have just been like, "Okay, fine." And then like been really stroppy about the fact that I'd had to rush my everything I needed to do. But I just said to him, "Can you take her? Do you mind taking her?" And he was like, "No, that's fine." And it was really like revelatory for me that I was like, "Oh, I've actually allowed myself to be helped." And that has been a long time, for me to ask for that, because again, it comes back to that feeling vulnerable and admitting that you can't do it all and that you're not this infallible human.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other conversation we could get into about
Yeah.
those rules that are probably at play for you to have gone through that
Yeah.
this morning.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to say about the space thing, like
Yeah.
even when we see people who don't have the greatest spaces on TV shows, the garden makeover things,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the story that's told is that they can't learn to do it on their own. They have to
Yeah.
have all these experts in. That takes a good 2-3 weeks. It's like massive vehicles and like fully established plants. So that's like the only vision that we get of how you transform your garden into something beautiful. If you've got a small, ugly, unused garden. So
Yeah.
again, it's that conditioning that
Thought
we've
about that.
seen that's saying to us, I couldn't do this on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't even considered that, but you're so right, aren't you? So then there's me banging on the internet like, "Oh, you can do it yourself in 20 minutes a day." And people are
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, whatever. I need Alan and his pals to come round with their big digger and sort it out."
Yeah.
And you know what? That is a viable option, right? But you're not going to get not going to get the beauty and the joy of actually growing it yourself. So
And wouldn't it be interesting? They never do revisits of those types of places. Like how alive are their gardens? Like
yeah, well then that's what
5 years down the
you've
line.
touched on one of my utter bugbears with those shows, is like they bugger off and just leave them, and then the people are
Yeah.
like, "Fuck, how do I look after this?" And then, like you say, 5 years later, God,
Yeah.
maybe I'll present a show like that. How good would that be? Oh
Yes.
my God. And then actually teach the people how to look after the frigging garden, right?
But
Because
that's the work. Like
yeah,
that's the work you do. You'll
yeah,
take someone along. Even with when we were creating my garden here, like you've walked me through. You've talked through the type of soil. You've gone through the list of the types of plants I should get and a planting plan.
yeah,
And I feel like I've got, obviously I can come back to you if I'm stuck,
yeah,
but I've got enough of an outline that should see me pretty much okay to keep the garden ticking over.
yeah,
The work I do, I'm working with someone. We're figuring out what the underlying rules are. We're flipping that into like what's the new belief we want to form, and we're doing these experiments in safe spaces to prove that we can rewire the way that we're thinking and acting and behaving. So
yeah,
we're like equipping people with the tools to go on and do it themselves, so that they
yeah.
have got agency and freedom. And the problem with a lot of these TV shows is it's like
We'll just do it
so
for you.
long. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I just suddenly had a thought there. It's kind of like parenting, isn't it? Like when my little one's trying to learn to put her shoes on and I'm like in a rush. So I'm like, "I'll just do it for you." And then she never learns. So
Yeah.
actually, like we've almost taken away that agency from people. And actually, no wonder so many of us feel so powerless, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
we don't actually
Absolutely.
have that agency to be able to learn and do it for ourselves. The last one that I really want to get into, or there's a couple more, but let's do. We're getting on for time, so I just want to do this
Yes.
one more. Is that it's an old person's hobby, which I get. I do get
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And again, it's
Yeah.
this sense of performance, isn't it? It's the if you really wanted to, like you could choose not to care about the fact it's an old person hobby if you really want to
Mm,
do it. But there's something about, I feel like I'm going to be judged if I do this. I don't value my kind of self-worth to do this. I need to perform in a certain way. There's probably a rule of like, oh, gardening is something I do when I retire. And I get to rest
mm,
later in life because right now I've got to work and earn money and look after my family. This isn't something that I'm going to do for me yet. So there's a lot of that that's at play. And then there's probably for some people, that sense of judgment of I'm taking up something that my friends are down the pub and I'm spending the afternoon in
my garden.
The garden. It's got the stigma. I think it's changing slightly. It is becoming more, particularly with a younger generations of people who are really interested in the environment and climate change and stuff like that. So they are looking, but perhaps they're not so garden focused as they are the environment in general focused. But yeah, we just don't see enough of people of a certain age. All these shows are tended towards an older audience. I went to my first ever gardening show live thing because it was nearby to us last year, and it was a very certain type of person that was there. And I was like, it's very white. It was very middle class.
We've
It was
spoken about
very
this before, haven't we? Yeah. Like, the zeitgeist, like, just the stale male pale thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, for me, I find it's that, or people are always like, people say to me all the time, "Oh, do you do children's workshops?" And I'm like, "No, I don't, because there's fucking hundreds of people doing children's workshops. I care about like the people in the middle, the people who need their garden more than ever because of the pressure that they're under from all of the things that they're trying to juggle and do." And so, children learn through modeling. So the way that you behave, your children see that, and then they behave in the same way, no matter what you do. And I'm a classic example of this. My parents ran their own business. They worked their absolute butts off. They were always pretty much working. And then I copied that. I copied that story and did the same thing. And where did it get me? Because I was working for a company that didn't really give a shit about my mental well-being. It got me burnt out. And I was like, there's got to be something different here. Like this is like a crazy pattern. So I'm now trying to unpick those patterns and choose a different life for myself effectively, which means like gardening on my lunch break for 20 minutes. Because and then my children see that. So then when they get to that stage in their life and pressure starts getting piled on, they still prioritize looking after themselves in the garden or going to a yoga class or whatever their thing is, because they'll have seen me do it and be like, that's okay to do that because mum did that. Like I think we underestimate the impact that those family relationships have on how we behave. Like we like to think we're kind of choosing our own path and doing our own thing, but actually, deep down is that subconscious conditioning. So my belief is, yes, it's great to teach kids, but if we want really to have the kids to continue to garden right through adulthood, it's the parents that we've got to really get into it now so they can be modeling that to their children.
And it's the framing of it. So undoubtedly you're going out and you're showing your children that you're doing these things because it helps like regulate you and it helps calm you and it helps you kind of show up better for the rest of your day. Whereas other people might hear the language of it's a chore. Oh, I've got to weed all these and deadhead, and there's so much work to do out there, and even if they're carving it into 10 minutes, 20 minutes, it's like I've got to do it.
And that was what my parents did. It was like, it's the weekend, we're not working, but now we need to work on the garden, and it was a faff. And so I understand why people are like, let's just astroturf this garden. It's too much like hard work. But actually, like if you can reframe it as an activity that is going to actually impact how you go about your life, your day to day, you're less snappy with the children, you're nicer to your colleagues at work, you're you've got a better, more connected relationship, not only with yourself but also with your loved ones, like with your partner. So I kind of think that it is that reframe, and I appreciate, I feel like I've got a lot of work to do on that narrative, because I think there's still those same old stories being perpetuated. So it's a lot, but it's my life's work, and I'm determined. So
well, it's you've done wonders with me and I still haven't become the person. But again, that's for me to challenge. What kind of person do I think I have to become to be in my garden, rather than just going, it's going to be really lovely to get out there, and I'm really going to benefit from it in the summer when it's looking all lovely, and my nice pink and yellow flowers will smell all lovely for me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, it doesn't have to, you don't have to like become a gardener.
No.
I think it's enough to go out there and just enjoy the space and do little bits and bobs. Like I think life fluctuates, doesn't it? You'll have quieter times and busier times. But yeah, I think if people do want to create that kind of like healing space for themselves, it doesn't have to take hours and hours of their time. It can sort of take that really kind of steady approach. Right. Well, we've been talking for a long time.
We have been talking for a long time.
And I'm quite hungry. So tell us a little bit about how people can work with you just quickly before we go. And then I will talk very quickly about how people can work with me, just because,
So I mainly work one-to-one, but I do also have something called the Unlearning Lab, which is a small container where we spend 3 months going through. We start the quarter with working out some of the really pressing rules and beliefs that are challenging your day to day. And we spend 3 months working on little mini experiments to shift our beliefs over time. So that's like the entry level to work with me. But then I do a range of one-to-one services where we can really dig deep into what are those stories that we're telling to ourselves that is shaping how we're working and living. So, I also write on Substack. So if people want to follow me, they can. I'm at Unlearning, and I share my own mini experiments. And my whole thing is like, how can we do small, tiny experiments to test a different way of doing things? So there's lots of possibilities to change our thinking.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting, isn't it? Those like small little clips. It's, obviously that's exactly how I teach people how to garden. So, for me, the thing that I'm launching in the spring, so 21st of March, is it's called Bloom, and it is 20-minute activities every day to create your garden sanctuary. So it's going to be a group experience. And we're going to be all in it together, and it is very much like very similar to your kind of unlearning, in that I'll be giving people the activity, the task to do in those 20 minutes, and then I want them to feed back like what's coming up for them, what's the blocker, what's getting in the way, because when I work one-to-one with people, that does always happen. And I also think there's a real power in like the collective action, like everybody kind of doing it alongside each other, seeing that other people perhaps are struggling. In fact, literally this morning in my Substack paid subscribers chat, a subscriber put in that she's been really struggling to get out in the garden because of the weather, and she wasn't feeling that great. And I can bet your bottom dollar, like pretty much everyone else in that chat is like, I also feel like this. So I think it's really nice to have that kind of safe space where you can kind of start to unlearn some of those behaviors, because this is why I wanted to have this chat with you, because I think there's such crossover between what we do. It's just mine is obviously like a gardening focus. So so if anybody wants to get in touch with Lee, then you can follow her on Substack. And also if you want to come and join the seed, you are very welcome. Like I said, the live round of Bloom starts on the 21st of March. So if a garden sanctuary is on your wish list for 2026, as it absolutely should be, then come and join us, because it's going to be really good fun. I'm really excited, and I've been doing some of the activities already, and I'm like really, really excited for it. So yes, thank you so much, Lee. Enjoy your lunch, because I'm going to go and eat mine now, and I shall see you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.